get going. I'm not sure. Okay, so yes, we are live. We're live with Adrian tonight. I think we're streaming to both of our channels tonight. So welcome, Adrian. My name's Jason with just Jason Keto and More. I guess I first heard your story probably on Anita's channel a couple of months ago. She's always got some great guests. So, and then we met up at Keto Palooza a couple of weeks ago there. So, as we had discussed there, I was hoping to, get together live here on YouTube so we could, just hear your story, find out, how you got into the whole ketovore, carnivore, sort of where you are, where you started and all that kind of thing. So I just got to do something here. I'd like to try and make sure that the actual live stream is running in the background here so that I can keep an eye on things. Okay, so there we go. I wasn't even ready tonight either. It's been one of those days. So yeah, it's good to see you again, Adrian. It's been a couple of weeks now since Keto Palooza. I hope you enjoyed. I think that was your first time there, was it?
It was. I heard it was the best event of the year, and I would say it's pretty darn good. That was a lot of fun. Yeah, I went in there maybe ready to not do my YouTube channel anymore because I have 4 kids. I'm busy. And I left there going, let's just keep doing this. Look at all these inspired people. And I hope everybody else does it too.
Yeah. The Keto Palooza crowd is definitely, I think the biggest thing that hits home for me, like that was my second year this year, but what really hits home is when you sit there and you've got people like Rachel from Two Crazy Ketos and, all the speakers there, and they're like, who's here for your first time? And then like 2/3 of the crowd is their first time. And then you see Dr. Barry ask, like, who's cured or who's reversed type 2 diabetes with this way of eating. And then you've got, so many people that stand up like that right there, I think is sort of a validation for what we do on YouTube kind of thing. And that's why that's the only reason I'm here, is to try and bring that information to enough people so that number keeps growing every year.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Like we were talking about before we started here, usually on the live streams and then even on the sort of interviews that I do for my podcast kind of thing, what I like to do is try and get to know the guest a little bit better, and just go through we don't have to go through every detail, but I just like to ask sort of where things started for you, and how did you get to this point, and sort of what were your sort of hurdles along the way kind of thing.
So first, I want to just say that I feel that eating meat is just one piece of all the things that we need to do to be our healthiest version of ourselves. It has been an absolute game-changing piece for me, but I needed to do the other pieces too, and we can talk about those as well. But I just think primal living is probably the optimal way to live. And so I feel like we feel optimal because we do this. But how did I get here? Trying everything else, literally everything else. I don't know if I've tried it all, but I've tried a lot. And it started when I was a little baby. There's never been a time I've been thinking about this. I don't know if you ever watched Carrie Mann. He's talked a lot about the evolution of, he'll say the carnivore diet, but really the evolution of all of this, of you come in, you feel one way, everything's going so great. Then you hit your first hurdle, and he just goes through the evolution. So I'm in a weird spot in my evolution of you get to look back at like, how have the past 2 years been? So that's where I am right now. So anyway, so little kid, always hungry and always being told that I'm overeating. We need to watch what that girl eats. I've always, and as I look back, because now I'm in my look back spot, I just think how sad to tell little kids you're not allowed to eat because you eat just like the rest of us. You're bad. You're different. You're this, you're that. You're less than. Even though you're doing the same thing, we all are. And then that creates a worse relationship with your food because now you're like, well, I'm not supposed to be eating. I'm not supposed to be like everybody. I'm different and I'm less than, it just creates this horrible mind spot. And that's how my entire life has been. And so it's amazing, a little bit of a different spot today, sort of a lot better. So,
Mhm.
struggle with weight my whole life. I have kind of a little bit of a tough upbringing just because I was raised by a single dad, and that's just tough. He was
Mhm.
21. We didn't have a lot of money. We were eating all the standard American stuff. We're eating the noodles, potatoes, bread with every single meal. We're drinking orange juice and milk with every single meal. And then there would be some hamburger. There'd always be vegetables too. I don't feel like the meat was the big part on the plate at all. I feel like it was everything else. And then there was always some meat on our plate, pretty much, I think. There was a lot of macaroni and cheese, a lot of canned stuff. And so I just was so overweight. And when I went to school, I was bullied very bad. It was a daily thing inside and after school until I was like 10, every single day. And so I just really built this horrible mindset that to this day I see myself leaning into that again and I go, that's not real. That's not real. So as I get older, my dad marries the most wonderful woman in the world, my stepmom, and so now I've got a mother figure in my life, and I'm skipping a whole bunch here, but we move into a new house, and I feel like the house is one of the pieces. We were living in a 120-year-old shack thing before this, and it's as I look back, it's crazy that I stopped struggling with my weight a little bit less when we move into a brand new build. And so
Mhm.
I start playing sports. I start just having confidence. I remember the day I stood up to my next door neighbor boy and said, I am not fat. And then I said, my sister is, so pick on her. My sister wasn't fat. But I just wanted to like push it somewhere else. And he left me alone for the rest of my life. And by the way, if your kid's a bully, he turned out to be a very good human. So anyway, so then high school, I get down to like I'm in like the 160s, which back in 1998 was big. I was still the biggest kid, one of the biggest kids in my class. So I was kind of lonely and I was very anxious, very, very anxious all the time and trying to find worth. And so that's why I did band and choir and drama and soccer and skiing and basketball and golf and track and field and National Honor Society and you name it, I did it all and I wanted to lead it all as an attempt to like find value in myself and have other people value me too. So there's a lot of stuff going on in here, you guys. I go to college, moldy old dorm rooms. I gained 60 pounds in a year. Just boom. And I think part of it was not moving, part of it's probably having access to the cafeteria. There was some drinking, but I wasn't 21, so there wasn't, like, a lot of access to that. I wouldn't say that that was a huge, huge, huge contributor, but none of that stuff helps. So, that's when I go on my first diet, you guys. I go on Atkins with my stepmom when I come home for the summer, and I lose 40 of the 60 pounds or something, and I was like, "I just work hard enough." I go back to school, I gain even more weight, and I'm so lonely, and I just really down on myself, and that's when kind of a crazy thing happened. I applied for the TV show The Biggest Loser, and I wanna say like 250,000 people applied, and I had a dream that I was gonna be picked, and I was. It was very, very crazy, and I did very well on the show. We can definitely dig into, like, what happens there, but I would just summarize it that it's a really extreme version of what the doctors tell us to do. They tell us, "Eat
Mhm.
less, move more, eat low fat, eat well-balanced meals." Eat in moderation, eat, and exercise. Like at the ranch, it felt like 90% of how we were going to be healthy was exercise. And the food was 10%. Oh, sorry, you guys, my internet isn't great. So
Hmm.
hang with me if you could. I already reset it, but so I do pretty well. I lose 66 pounds, but the second I go home, the cravings. I was primarily doing a lot of cardio, and the cravings were monstrous. And I gained 100 pounds probably within a year. And then what I did, which so many of us can relate to, when you actually finally did all that work and you lost so much weight and then you gain it back. And when you were losing, you were so proud of yourself and you wanted to share, this is possible, guys. We can do this. We can do this. It's totally possible. And I did it. And we can all do this together. You want to inspire other people. And then when you gain it back, I went hiding. Like I didn't go back to my hometown for like 5 years. Honestly, I wouldn't step foot there cuz I was celebrated and I didn't want to go back and then be like, what happened to you? And of course everybody's going to blame you. They're going to say, well, you didn't get therapy, as Jillian Michaels would say. She said, "Oh, you didn't therapy hard enough." So I gained all my weight back. Thanks, Ellie. I gain all my weight back plus more. I get married. Through pregnancy, I end up with preeclampsia and I top off. I stopped weighing myself at 100 or 330 pounds. And after feeling that on my body and not being able to get out of bed and not being able to walk in a grocery store and just not being able to function and everything hurting inside my body and just knowing like this can't be good, that's when I went back to my biggest super weight and I ran and I restricted. And I lost 100 pounds all by myself. Low fat, running, restricting, pre-making all of your food. Everything is perfect, 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 perfect. I get down to 230 and my weight starts going back up again. And at this point, I'm like, I can't do this again. I didn't get even close to my goal. I didn't even make it to Wonderland and I'm going back up and I'm blaming myself and I'm having just a horrible time trying to eat these foods that are healthy. And I am starting to have stomach issues. My energy's getting down. And I asked my Biggest Losers, like, what's the secret? And they said gastric bypass. So I had
Mm.
gastric bypass. And I would just like to say before I continue, if anybody's considering gastric bypass, I got like 500 other ideas for you. Please do not do gastric bypass. Specifically, gastric bypass. Do not do it. You will have nutrient deficiencies for the rest of your life. I just found out from Dr. Saivez that when they move your stomach, and I think it's 130 centimeters of your intestine, they move it further down on the track, and you've got like a tree branch hanging off of your body, that branch can become infected and
Mm.
it's not getting access to everything you swallow. So I've taken $10,000 worth of gut protocols and none of the gut protocol ever hits that branch that they sewed on further down. So now I got to figure out if anybody in the audience knows. Will you please comment? How do I get the infection out of that tree branch? That's my next thing I got to figure out, because since having the surgery, first of all, I only lost weight for a couple of months and then it stopped. I went in, I said, "Hey, I'm eating like 900 calories a day. I'm following your diet. I'm training for a half marathon. I'm lifting weights. Why am I gaining weight?" And they just said that I wasn't writing it down correctly. Like they blamed me. They
Mhm.
maybe ran a TSH. That's about as far as it went. There's no autoimmunity check. There's no, hormone check. They didn't dig into any of that, which honestly should be dug into prior to any surgery to begin with, because surgeries don't address metabolic dysfunction, in my opinion. So I've had issues ever since. And the number one issue that I've had since then is chronic hypoglycemia. I cannot eat. So for 10, 11 years, I've been cutting, trying to get rid of anything that could be causing this hypoglycemia. And so bread, sugar, ice cream, cookies, those things were out before I even had the surgery and they've never come back. I never even tried those, and I was having hypoglycemia. So then next I cut, the potatoes, then I cut the fruit, then I cut this, then I cut that. And before I became carnivore, I was pretty much down to green beans, chicken, lettuce. I mean, I was down to like nothing. And those things shouldn't be causing you hypoglycemia. So throughout time too, other things start happening. I hit my head really hard on the ice. I slipped while I was curling. Do you know what that is?
Mhm.
You're
I'm
from are you
Canadian. I
are you
am. I know all about curling here in Canada,
Yes.
yeah.
Nobody else probably does, but me and you, we do. So I was curling and I went to throw the rock and I slipped and I landed on my head
Mm,
and I left my body for a little bit and came back into my body and I didn't go to the hospital. It was bad. So I have a pretty significant head injury. Um, I had that marriage I was in was not optimal in any way, shape, or form, and that causes a lot of inflammation. Trauma causes inflammation. Then we moved into a home that ended up having a roof leak and other things. And so then I ended up with like a mold exposure. And
mm,
the final ticket was getting the 2021 version of the bad virus.
mm,
Because there's versions that aren't as horrible, but that version that was in the early days was horrible. And I was
mhm,
pregnant and I had pneumonia on all sides of my lungs and they were gonna put me on a ventilator and C-section my baby out. And I sought other help and I found an external doctor who gave me some other medicines and whipped me into shape. So praise
mm,
the Lord, we're here today. But I've never been
mhm,
the same since that dang bug. That's a nice word for it.
mhm,
So I become debilitated after that. And there's a whole reason I'm telling you all this because I can't sleep. I'm peeing constantly. In the middle of the night, I was just laying there with restless legs, and you just lay there with your eyes closed and you try to tell yourself positive things. You try not to be anxious about the fact that you haven't slept as long as you can remember. And I would just lay there all night with my eyes closed, not sleeping. And then when I had to pee, I would get up and I couldn't hardly feel my legs or my arms. And so I would like to the bathroom and it was very scary. Like I didn't know if I stepped, if my foot would actually grab me. And so sometimes I fell as I was going to the bathroom. I started having significant neurological issues. Like I was having terror. I don't know if anybody's ever had that, but that's very uncharacteristic for me. I had never had that in my life and it petrified me. And I didn't want to tell anybody that I was having this because I didn't want them to think that I was a nut job because everybody already thinks that anyway. Anyway, kind of a joke. So I'm also having a difficult time driving. Every time I get in the car, I get in and then I was drinking I'm drinking a certain electrolyte, and after I drink that electrolyte, my head would get really floaty and my arms and legs would go numb, and I was always drinking this in the car, so that was super bad. Every time I ate, I was having food reactions constantly. I was so tired. I was having a hard time getting up and down the stairs, and my house is up on a hill, and so I would have to walk up a hill and then up a flight of stairs to get to our main level, and I had these 2 babies I had to carry and groceries, and I was struggling, you guys. And I tried to tell people I was struggling, and they were like, "Why don't you ever do laundry?" And I'm like, "'Cause the laundry's in the basement."
mm,
Like, and they were like, "You just gotta suck it up. You just gotta work harder." And I'm like, "I can't. There's nothing left in me." And what ended up happening was with my baby, this is baby number 4. None of my babies I had milk with them. And so this last one, I went so far as birthing him at home in a bathtub. We stayed skin to skin. We had the doctor come to us, lactation came to us, we had cranial sacral come to us, we had all our food pre-made. We did everything perfect. And I still didn't have milk. And so because of that, my doctor ran some tests and found, Adrian, your adrenals are dead. Your
Mm.
hormones are in the tank. Your thyroid is not working. You have Hashimoto's. You have lichen sclerosis, which is autoimmune. You've got long haul COVID. You've got chronic fatigue syndrome. And she just went on and on and on and on. But it didn't seem like there was an answer. Like, what do we do about it? And my dad said he follows Vinny Tortorich.
Mhm.
And my dad lost 60 pounds doing the no grains, no sugar. And Vinny's co-host had autoimmune and said and went carnivore. And my dad said, Adrian, you got to go carnivore. And I was like, what? That's nonsense. What about all
Mhm.
my nutrients? So I think it was October, November 2022. I started listening to you amazing carnivore people out there and listening to stories of hope, listening to people who had autoimmune conditions that healed them, listening to Judy Cho, listening to all the things. And so January 2023, so in November, I started cutting things.
Mm.
January 2023, I said, okay, I'm carnivore. And I've been carnivore ever since. So I always thought I was keto, but I wasn't. Like I was low carb. I had no
Mhm.
idea that you were supposed to be eating fat and that you're supposed to be fasting. That wasn't, I'd say I'm more keto today than I've ever been because I didn't implement any of those things. So that is my story of how I got here. I don't know if you want to
Mhm.
know, like, I could ramble on and on and on what's happened ever since.
Yeah, no, I think it is quite the story. Like there's so many layers to that like even going back to when you were on the show, and I know from listening to other people that have talked about it, like you say, it is basically just eat less, move more, ramped up as high as it can go, kind of thing. But it's always, even some people like Dr. Barry will say, you can lose weight by not eating, but as soon as you stop doing that, then it just all sort of piles back on because you haven't fixed what's up here to begin with. And starving yourself is just, I did the same thing too. I did the whole, well, let's eat rice and chicken and go to the gym 3 times a week or 4 times a week. And some people can do it. It's just not something I can maintain. And, I never really sort of fixed or had my lifestyle change come from the way of thinking first instead of the way of eating. I guess I don't know if that makes sense. When I really changed my life is because of my young grandchildren that I couldn't play with, and I was just worn out all the time. I'm like, well, I got to do something. So my lifestyle change came from up here first, I guess. Is like what I'm trying to say. And then I found something. Thankfully, I found something like keto and ketovore, and I've never gone as far as carnivore, but you know, I think that's being able to uh, find that reason why you want to change really helps a lot of people. But it sounds like your journey, and this is exactly why I like to talk to as many different people as I can, because we all do things for different reasons, but sometimes these reasons are drastic. Like yours, you're doing carnivore to save your life, basically. Like you have, you know some people do it for just for weight loss, and then a lot of times they go on and off diets like this. But your story uh, sort of reminds me of like people like Michaela Peterson, who she's strict carnivore too, because that's the only way she can basically exist, right? So, I think it's important that people hear these things, and the whole gastric bypass part of it too. I don't know a lot about it, personally, but it's always good to hear people that have had experiences with it.
Yeah, I think the
So,
two things I was missing in
mhm.
all of these attempts was I was working out the whole time. So that's great.
Mm,
So if you could preserve muscle, I was doing that. However, um, I was still eating foods that were triggering, like the really, really processed foods that were really triggering. And then I didn't recognize, I was like, why can't I control these things? There's something wrong with me. Not,
Mhm.
hey, this was made to be highly palatable and you're not going to be able to, it's going to be very difficult for you to, and you're just being told in our society that you should be able to eat this in moderation. You should be able to. And if you can't, that's a you problem. But really, it was made, some of the dirty keto foods, they were made so that you can't stop.
Mhm.
Another thing I was missing, obviously, I was missing the whole part about how meat is so nourishing. I was
Mhm.
missing that. And then I was missing the metabolism piece. I'm banging my head against the wall and I'm working so hard and I'm eating like nothing and I'm sacrificing so much. And I don't know why it's not working. And it's because my metabolism had said, hey, stop it, dummy.
Mhm.
Like, you're killing me here. Obviously, we're in a famine, and so we're going to preserve everything you have here. And so I would like to thank my body for trying to save me despite me. I'm constantly trying to hack it,
Mhm.
override it. And my body is just way more intelligent than I am.
Mhm. Yeah, that's a tough thing that, I think a lot of people, in this space that we're in and trying to be able to find out what your body's trying to tell you, it's like a foreign language, right? Like it takes so long to be able to say, okay, well, maybe I'm doing something wrong because my body is saying, hey, I don't like this. And, it's tough to be able to learn how to listen to your satiation, and one of the biggest things I've found over the last almost 6 years of doing this is trying to even just feel or know how it feels to be full. Like,
Mhm.
right, it's tough because you're right, we're so used to, as a society, eating all of this processed garbage that uh, never ever sort of satiates you, so you never actually know, like, okay, you can stuff yourself so that you can't, you feel sick because you ate too much, but you're never actually full. But then when you start eating fatty meats and all that, then you really know what it's like to be full. Like, I was eating tonight and I'm like, ooh, I don't rarely not finish what I'm eating in a meal, but tonight I got to a point where, like, "Mm, I'm full." So, being able to feel that is definitely a foreign concept to a lot of people when they start this. So it's, I can see uh, how it's something important to learn when we change our lifestyle.
Yes, I used to eat huge salads, huge buckets of salad, and I thought that I was full after eating that salad. But then I was
Hmm.
wondering, why am I back in the kitchen an hour later? Well, because I wasn't actually full.
Hmm. Yeah, absolutely. So I think we got lots of people in here tonight. I just been posting some of the comments here. We did have one question that came in early here. We might want to address this from Chrissy. I don't know if this user is from your chat. What has been the biggest impact in your health? I don't know if that's just in general. It sounds like the carnivore diet has probably, at this point, been one of the bigger impacts that you've had.
So, because of all the autoimmune stuff, I threw the kitchen sink at it, you guys.
Hmm.
I I didn't immediately start the Shoemaker protocol for the chronic inflammation, but shortly after is when I started taking binders. We knew that there was water damage in our home. I just didn't realize that it could make you sick. And I wonder how many people out there don't realize like how serious water damage can be.
Hmm.
And so we removed ourselves from our home and we've been renting ever since. And now it's been a sore in my entire family
Yeah.
because how do you rent another space and renovate your house at the same time? But
Hmm.
also, I couldn't stay in that house because I literally couldn't even go up and down the stairs living there.
Hmm.
And so it was a huge thing getting out of that house. So I can't tell you 100%, was it the carnivore diet? Was it moving out of the house? Is it the binders I'm taking? Is it the supplements I'm taking? I couldn't tell you which one is the thing. I'm going to guess moving out of the house was the most important thing.
Mm,
But then, secondly, I get to be full. I get to be nourished. So
mhm.
there's no way that that isn't having a huge, that was way too many negatives. That has to be having a huge impact on my healing. It has to be. Here's another thing. I recognize this isn't common before people freak out. But for me, at the time, all plants were inflaming me. And that inflammation was causing hormone disruption, which is why I was having, and I might be wrong on this, but this is how I understand it, why I was continually having hypoglycemia. I cut the plants. I haven't had any hypoglycemia so long as I don't add any plants back. That's not common. I understand.
Mm,
But so for me, just getting that one piece back has been life changing. I have had hypoglycemia at every birthday party I've thrown, every trip I've gone on. I didn't know when I was working out, like let's say I went for a long walk, I wouldn't know if a mile or two in I was going to get hypoglycemia and be shaking and sweating and pass out midway with my children. It was debilitating. I couldn't go to the store without hypoglycemia. Any little stress, I would get text messages from my attorney and my blood sugar would drop. This hypoglycemia was debilitating and it did not go away until I went carnivore. So, for anybody out there who's like, well, I don't know what to do. Do I need to go carnivore? I don't think everybody has to go carnivore.
mm,
I think that's what's best for me because of what I'm dealing with. If and I believe that when we reduce that inflammation in our gut, it allows our body to start healing and processing and maybe clean up some of the holes in our gut and clean up some of our, allow our hormones to process better. And then I believe that one day I should be able to add some seasonal plants back. Do I need
mhm.
the seasonal plants? Eh. But it would be nice to go to
Sure.
Apple Festival with my family and have an apple one day, you know?
Yeah. Mhm. Oh, yeah, 100% agree. I think it's if people and I've, I don't obviously I don't thankfully knock like I don't have any of the major health issues that a lot of people do, but the one thing that never really got better with my diet change was my gut health. It was never it's been bothering me for, let's say, 30 years to be, at least I know it's going back that far that it's been bothering me. But I don't think it's necessarily the plants. It's just all the crap I was eating. So that's what I've been focusing on too for the last 6, 8 months, kind of thing. I went a different route. I actually added fermented vegetables to my diet,
Mm.
and it has really changed. I'm gone from fixing my gut 90% to 99% kind of thing. So it's still not 100%. I'm still not exactly where I want to be. Maybe going carnivore might change it, but then I'd have to give up the fermented vegetables. And, so I think just like you're saying is the way you do things, the way I do things, the way people in the chat do things, it's all got to be, your way, what works for you, what makes you feel best. Don't let anyone say, well, you have to do it this way and, have to do it that way. Cause we learn pretty quickly that, we can't look at the way someone else does things and then expect it just to work for us.
Yeah, there's a doctor that was just on my friend's channel, and he eats fermented with every single bite he takes.
Hmm.
And he's a pretty well known doctor. Do you know who I'm
Yeah.
talking about?
I don't, to be honest
Oh,
with you, I haven't done a ton of sort of deep dive research into the whole fermented foods things. Like I've heard a few people talk about it, and I don't go to that extreme. Basically, I just have a serving of some sort of fermented kimchi, sauerkraut, any of those things. I do that once a day, and it has really changed things for my gut health kind of thing and the way I feel. So,
Dr. Sean O'Mara. Is that it?
okay.
That
Uh,
could be it.
yeah, I'll have to take a look because, like I say, it's one of those things I've this has been a sort of experiment just on myself to see how things go. And it is going to the, well enough that I will sort of dive a little deeper into it, and do some more research on it and start making my own fermented foods and stuff like that. So,
One of my brain is today is that prior to this, I had this real restriction mindset that if I restricted enough calories, I would lose the weight. And then that transformed into if I restricted enough carbohydrates, I would lose weight. And then that turned into if I restrict all the plants, I will finally lose weight. Then I went all the way down to lion diet. And do you know what
mm,
happened?
probably
I
gained weight
lost
on it.
some weight, and then about a month, just over a month in, my body completely shut down, and I gained 14 pounds in 4 days.
Mm,
And at that
yeah.
point, I was like, "Okay, maybe restriction isn't the right direction." Exactly.
Hmm.
Obviously, I'm not saying, "Let's try to eat cake every day in moderation." No, that's not what I'm
Yeah.
saying, but I think this idea, it's I'm wondering how healthy it is to be so afraid of all the foods. And so that's where my brain
Exactly.
is
Yeah.
processing right now.
Yeah.
I don't want to
Absolutely.
trigger binge eating and I don't want to be eating processed foods. That's not what I mean. But
Hmm.
like, do I need to be afraid of apples
Mm.
if they
Yep.
don't cause you a food reaction? So I don't
Right.
know. That's where my brain is right now.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I feel you too. Like I'm. My problem is I just don't have the personality to be able to experiment with things that I don't eat now. You know what I mean? Like it's one of those things where I could go out and I could eat whatever, at a party or something. My problem is I'd probably feel fine afterwards, and then that would lead to, oh, let's do it again in a month, and then that would
Mm.
lead to do let's do it again in a week, and so I stick to what I know makes me feel good, but I know what you're saying. It gets to the point where like, you know, am I really, is it, would it really hurt me, or is it's just in my head about it. So,
So I'm in a little bit different spot than other people are. So for me, I can't eat an apple because it really will cause me hypoglycemia and I won't feel good.
mhm,
But should I be afraid of eggs? Because some people get inflamed with eggs, and sometimes
mm,
it gives me a little bit of a stomach ache. Eggs are nutritious. I should eat
yeah,
eggs. Should
mhm,
I be hyper afraid of dairy because it makes me puffy? Well, maybe I should just weigh it out and have one serving on top of my eggs instead of buying cheese blocks and eating
mm,
cans of the purple can of Ready Whip.
right. Yeah,
Um, so that's where my brain is can I should be able to have pork belly even though I could eat that
mm,
all day long.
right,
I need to
right,
stop being so afraid of all of the foods because lion
mm,
diet was not the ticket for me.
sure. Okay, well, we have a few questions here, so let's get caught up on a few things. We've got P&J's Homestead Adventures. They're over from my channel. They're a homesteading channel. Can you ask Adrian what her usual menu is in a day, what she prefers to eat, how many times a day? So I don't know. Like, do you do any sort of intentional fasting these days too?
So P&J, if you ask me in 2 months, I promise you the answer will be different. And if you asked me 2 months ago, the answer would be different and 2 months before that because I'm in a continual experiment. So the
Mm,
current thing that I'm doing is 2 meals a day, and I'm not focusing on fat, and I know there's another question on fat coming up.
hmm.
I really feel great actually with medium fat, and I know that doesn't
Hmm.
make any sense hormonally. I totally understand that doesn't make sense with the hormones. I think I have a slight case of maybe lipedema, but anyway, um, so right now for breakfast this morning, I had smoked salmon, about 4 ounces. Okay, I had 6 ounces. It was really good. And then I had 3 eggs, and then I sprinkled, 1 serving of cheese on top.
Mm,
So that's a pretty good breakfast. And
hmm.
then I had some coffee with some half and half, I try to go lactose free half and half, and I do measure it out, so it was 2 tablespoons. So that's kind of my breakfast. And then during the day, I'm just drinking, to be honest, one of the things I've added That's very strange for me to say. When I came into carnivore, I had no sweetener. And what I found was every time I went on vacation, I would want to have some coffee with some, my favorite sweetener is Splenda. I know people
Mm,
are like, oh, it's artificial, but if you listen to Joe and Rachel, you'll understand why I'm not 100% against small doses of Splenda. So, anyway,
mhm,
so then I would come home and I'd be like, well, I had Splenda. I might as well have some Lily's chocolate. I might as well have this and that. And like my brain just went like into addiction mode, like, hey, I'm going to go on a bender now. And I would continually come, and a bender for me is different than a bender for other people because if I eat any
mm,
carbohydrates, I get sick. Even Lily's chocolate made me sick. But then I would kick myself. And then I would be like, okay, I got to start a challenge. And this whole cycle was so unhealthy. And I did this like 8 times. And finally, I don't know what it was. I think it was the lion diet. It was a lion diet where I was like, okay, I'm going to have sweetener. That's it. I'm going to have electrolytes. That's going to be my sweetener. And
mhm,
I've been having sweetened electrolytes ever since. I recently went to Keto Palooza. I didn't feel bingy. I didn't feel like I needed a treat on my trip. I came
mm,
home. I didn't feel like I needed a treat. Nothing happened. I'm still on track. The whole psyche is so much better since
sure.
just having a sweet drink each day. So,
Mhm,
I'll drink. I'm a big Coco Loco lady. If you guys
mm,
haven't had it, it's so good on ice or hot. It's
right.
Coco Loco is where it's at. I just skip the fruit. Coco
Mhm,
Loco, you guys. You don't even have to add it to your coffee. Don't waste it on your coffee. Just drink it straight. It's so good. Okay. So now dinner time. We eat a lot of picanha. I love picanha. The whole family loves it. We put it in our tasty air fryer. Um, or I will have my husband just went to Alaska for his 40th birthday and he brought me home a freezer full of fresh fish. So we'll broil fish. That's a big one we have all the time. Another thing, I'll make hamburger. I'll just cook hamburger. I love 80/20 hamburger and I don't drain it. And I just put some salt on top. My whole family loves it. Even my kids love when I just chop up some 80/20 and put some salt on it and don't cut the fat out. And we love that. Those are some pretty big dinners. Now, a big issue I've had is eating before bed. Well, I joined
mm,
Maria Emmerich's challenge last month, and she said in her challenge, if you're hungry before bed, like you can't sleep, you thinking about it every 5 seconds. You're like, okay, I'm not hungry. I'm not hungry. But then 5 minutes later, you're like, I am hungry. But you're like, no, I'm
mhm,
not. No, I'm not. And you're like, no, but I really am. I have eggs or egg whites and shrimp. So that's what I allow myself as much as I want, fill my belly with egg whites and shrimp. And so that's been the ticket lately. And this summer, I had gained quite a bit of weight because of that purple can of Ready Whip and all the cheese. And I stopped
mm.
tracking. And through Maria and through this, I have almost all of my weight back off, and I'm feeling good again. And it's been pretty good. So
Yeah. Yeah, no, and again, I think that comes down to doing what you have to do to figure out what works for you. And it's and every single person here is going to have something different that works for them. So like even that can of sugar-free Ready Whip, there's days that I am thankful that I can't even get it here in Canada, so
yeah.
I don't have that problem. So but okay, so we have a comment. My mom went carnivore and says great things about how she feels. I don't think I could do it. And again, I think that is, 100% true. I can't, I've tried it. I've done it for 2 weeks, I think was the longest I could do it. And if you're not happy with how you're living, it's just not never going to work. Right. So,
It's not sustainable if you're not happy.
yeah, for sure. Okay. Have either of you considered gut healing yogurt? I don't know if you can speak to that first, and then I'll give my sort of experiment with it.
So that was my BFF Becky. We talk every single day.
Okay.
Um, I have issues with yogurt because of the sugar in it, first of all. Secondly, the dairy. I'm really trying to reduce my dairy, and I find yogurt so addictive. I could eat yogurt
Mm,
all day and night. So I avoid yogurt like the plague. But my other problem is that my gut is so holy still. Like I'm still inflamed. My inflammation numbers from my doctor are still pretty high. Um, that when I try vinegar, when I try the different gut supplements, it makes me sick. And
Mm.
I guess it's because it's going right through my gut into my bloodstream.
Hmm.
So I think a poop transplant would probably be more effective for me.
Yeah, and I've sort of, the whole, she's probably talking about like the L Rootery yogurt that I may try eventually. I've experimented with kefir, like the fermented dairy. First time I experimented with it was with cow's milk kefir, and nope, not it was not going to happen. It just made things 100 times worse. But then I did try like a sheep's milk kefir, and I was all right with that, and it helped a little bit. But for now, I'm just sort of focusing on the fermented vegetables because I can tolerate them really well. At some point, I'd like to try the yogurt just to see if I can tolerate it, kind of thing. But so far, I haven't. I haven't gotten into that either. So the dairy, I've never been very good with, uh, especially cow dairy. Like if I was to drink milk, even like heavy cream and coffee, I just can't do it. You know, once in a while it's all right, but if I do it too much, it just ruins my day.
Jason, have you heard of BPC 157 and TB 500?
I can't say that I have. No, no.
You might want to write that down. They're saying, it's Dr. Rimka specifically, I think. There's a whole bunch of other doctors that are saying this. They're saying if you take these two peptides, and there's a nasal version, I think there's an oral version, and then there's a shot version. They say that it'll heal your gut in 60 days.
No, I am. Hmm.
Mhm. And it's a
Yeah.
string of peptides. It's a protein, just like collagen, I guess, and I guess it'll
Sure.
heal your gut in 60 days, but I had never heard of this until recently. So,
Hmm.
my brain is kinda going, "Hmm, what's that?"
Yeah. Yeah. If it's
And,
something that's
there's so
it.
much for us to try that it's just on the list. It's just the
Mhm.
seed in my brain right now.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so here's this question about fat. Has the good fat with carnivore helped you heal? So I guess that's like I say, it's one of those things too where we've all been so scared of fat for so many years that you know the thought of using fat to heal ourselves just does is kind of a foreign concept.
I go through these phases where I eat a lot more fat, and then I go through phases where it doesn't feel good, and so I pull back. I'm currently in kind of a pullback. But there's especially when I first started, because of my gastric bypass, I didn't know what else to do. So I covered everything in butter so that it would go through my altered stomach. And it
Mm,
felt so good to eat that. And for my kids, when I make them meat, I constantly cover it in butter and tallow and bacon fat because they say it's so good for their brains. There's been
mhm.
periods too where I cannot get enough carnivore bar. There's not enough carnivore bars in the world. And then there's moments where I will put it in my mouth and I'll be like, nope, not
Yeah.
today. So it's definitely, it ebbs and it flows. And I try to just listen to myself. What do you think?
Yeah, it's you're right. I think again it's one of those things where you have to, you know, always be listening to, you know, how you're reacting to what you're eating because you're right. Your body is really smart. It's the same with, electrolyte levels and sodium and all that. Like your body will tell you when you've had enough of something. And that's the way I feel about it too. But it'll also tell you when you haven't had enough. And I think that's the ability to listen to those messages is key, because if you're overeating something that you don't really need, then ultimately, I know everyone's like, oh, well, keto is a high fat diet and all that. And I guess it all
Maria is
depends.
pretty low fat.
Yeah, I know, and that's the whole thing. Like, I think the problem is that the world has still confused, a healthy, proper human diet, if it were, with therapeutic ketogenesis, right? Which is a high fat therapy, right? Where, it's if you're under that kind of therapy, you're eating 95% fat in your diet, but that's to fix, specific issues. I've, over the last few years, sort of learned to prioritize the protein first, and then your body will tell you how much fat you need if you're always tired and all that, and maybe up your fat a little bit to get a little more energy. But you're right, it can definitely, uh, it's always a constant battle to keep things sort of on an even plane, so to speak. So let's see. I think Chrissy's got another question here. 2 years carnivore now, but I still gain weight on very high fat. Have to watch my fat. Thoughts? Yep. And I think that comes down to, again, we've been taught that, oh, fat's not the enemy, and it definitely isn't the enemy, but you can definitely, at the end of the day, too many calories are too many calories, and fat is the easiest way to get those calories to be, above your TDE. I personally don't track anything, and I don't even know what my TDE is. I work based on how I feel, but that doesn't always work. You have to be maybe tracking for a certain amount of time to see where you are as far as your intake and expenditure, and try and maybe prioritize protein a little over the fat, and then work that way. That's just my thoughts on it anyways. I don't know how you feel about that.
I feel like it's a cross between somewhere where Kelly Hogan is and somewhere where Maria Emmerich is. And I think maybe we have to move between the two. So Maria's is, you'll have your PSMF days a couple days a week. And
Mm-hmm.
then like one day a month, you'll have, she calls it an overeating day where you're close to your TDEE, which let's say that's 1800 calories. So, but mostly it was a lot lower calorie than you would think, but it was pure
Mm-hmm.
protein, but not a ton of fat. So we're getting, what was it, like 160 grams of protein. Um, I don't remember how many fats. Let's go with 80 grams of fat. But then you have your PSMF days where you're much lower. You're like 30 grams of fat. And those were very
Mm-hmm.
low calorie days. So, and I think you can do that some, but then I think you maybe have to bounce up towards where Kelly says. Kelly says stay like 10 to 20% less than your TDEE. So you're not at that much of a deficit and you're between 50 and 70% fat. So I think if you vary between where Kelly says and you do periods of what Maria says, that's just so much work.
Mm-hmm.
That's
Mm-hmm.
where I am right now, where I'm like, I don't it I don't know if for most women, if the carnivore diet is a weight loss diet. I think it's a health diet for most
Mm-hmm.
women. And I don't know
Mm-hmm.
about keto because I'm kind of new in the keto. And there are women who've lost weight on keto.
Mm-hmm.
So I
Yeah.
don't know, but the carnivore, it's like your body as a female, your body wants you to have some fat so you can have babies. And so
Mm-hmm.
so it's optimal for us, but it doesn't give us the optimal body we're looking for. Maybe
Mm-hmm.
optimal healthy, optimal fertility, but
Sure.
not optimal bikini.
Yeah. Yeah. And I guess sometimes I feel, hey, I'm not, uh, let's say I don't have all of the knowledge. I know how keto worked for me, but I also know that, from being in this sort of YouTube universe long enough, from starting keto, is that what works for men is not going to work for women. We there's the old saying is that, men can just, they lose weight no problem. Like, they can change one thing in their life. I gave up drinking soda 10 years ago, and I dropped 10 pounds in a week, right? So, but
Yes.
we're not dealing with the hormone part of it, right? So, like you say, and I've tried to, one of the things I've always tried to put forth on this channel too, though, is that keto, ketovore, carnivore, none of them are about losing weight. I don't think that's the way. Like, you can't look at any of these proper human diet protocols as a weight loss diet. They're health optimization. That's all it is. If we're not healthy, we can't lose weight. So you get healthy first, and then you can lose weight.
So this is why the men lose weight on it. You guys get all sexy and handsome. You age backwards. You get all these muscles. Your testosterone starts going up. This is so optimal for you guys, so you guys can go out and kill some bears and feed us and fight each other for land and all that. Where women, we need our fat for our babies. We need breast tissue to make milk, and we need, so it's funny. Thank you for saying that, because I'll never forget the day. And to this day, my dad believes this. He's like, I went carnivore and I lost 60 pounds in a couple of months. I don't know what the big deal is with you and mom. My mom's a type 2 diabetic. She can't lose weight. Like, she's trying so hard and she just cannot lose it. And I feel like I'm with her. Like, our bodies are female bodies are they're very resistant to this. They say, hey, what about my hormones? What about the babies?
Yep. Yeah. And that's, I think, again, the biggest part is trying to recognize those differences. And I've had I have had pushback in the past saying the whole, well, it's not about weight loss. It's not about weight loss. Weight loss is a side effect. Personally, that's the way I look at it. You have to do what you have to do to heal your hormones and, heal your gut. And then I've also come to the realization, like when I first started keto back in 2019, I lost that 80 pounds in 1 year, like the typical story.
Dude.
Got down to 198, but that's not where my body wanted to be. Like, that was I didn't feel good at that point, like I could tell that that's not what was optimal for me. So now I sort of hover around the 210, somewhere in there, wherever I feel good. But and I just attribute that to just trying to be as healthy as I can, and then let my body decide where it needs to be, as where my homeostasis is, if you want to call it that.
We got some funny comments.
Yeah, what are we seeing here? Have been cycling sardine fast days, and it's been a huge help. Down 11 pounds in 28 days. So that's
Chrissy, thank you
pretty
for
good.
inspiring me. Please keep sharing that, because you know what? I've got a cruise coming up, and I'm thinking like the Maria thing got me going. It put a little bit of wind back in my sail, but like, how am I going to get to like feeling my very best? And sardines always make me feel my best. I think they're so anti-inflammatory, and they're so full of the nutrients we need. And the fasting part gets that extra inflammation off. I'm with you. Let's do it.
Yeah,
11 pounds. That's awesome, Chrissy.
Yeah, absolutely. And then, what's Mike saying here? Killing bears and invading countries, the Viking life. Yeah, that's funny.
I'm very Finnish.
Yeah. So no, like I say, I don't know. At the end of the day, I think it's so important to have these conversations. Again, like I've heard over the last, I've done this 30, 40 times with different guests, and hearing, like, I've talked to a few people that were in and out of the chat tonight, talked to type 1 diabetics that, manage their life with keto as well. And the parts of everybody's story is what makes up our whole community. That's the way I feel about it. Like, there's going to be some part of what you share, some part of what I share, some part of what everybody in the chat is sharing, like the sardine fast parts things. I personally could never do it. I don't think I could stomach sardines.
You need my sardine salad. You need my sardine salad pork rind cereal recipe. It's really good.
Yeah. I've gone as far as put them in chaffles, but that's about, and I've eaten them straight out of the tin before. That's one of those things. I don't know if I could do a straight sort of 3-day fast on them. But again, that's one of those things that, I've seen enough people talk about it that say it helps, which is, the best thing about doing these conversations is because that might put it in someone else's head that, hey, hey, I could eat sardines for 3 days and then, let's give it a try.
I got to give a shout out to, hopefully you'll post her comment here in a second. Becky is I don't know what you call it. She's my hero, my sidekick, willing to do anything with me. She just did Maria's
Mm.
challenge with me, and we're sitting here thinking, what should we do next? And it looks like we're going to be starting fasting until the cruise.
Yeah. Well, again, that's the great part about this community is that there's always people willing to, try different things with you
Push
and
each
help
other.
you, help push each other, help keep each other accountable. That's part of why I go on YouTube too, is to sort of, for the accountability piece of it. Personally, I've never sort of gotten into any of the, quote unquote challenges that are done throughout the community, but that's just my personality. I'm all for people doing, months of carnivore and, like what Anita's doing with the lion diet, just to try it out kind of thing. Sardine fasting, egg fasting, you know, but I only stay away from it because I know that that's probably not going to work for my psyche. So I prefer just to stay in the background when things like that go on. But I think it helps as a community to do things together and figure out what helps for everyone.
I meant to say partner in crime. She's my partner in
Okay.
crime.
There you go. Cool. Okay. I do high fat sardine days with no fat sardine days.
Mm.
Okay. Yeah, and that's the thing too. Like we have to realize, just like eggs, eggs are a superfood. Unfortunately, we can't always, not everybody can tolerate them. Things like sardines and some of the smaller fish, they're should be considered superfoods as well, instead of all this kale and all this other stuff out there. But yeah, whatever makes you feel good, and throw some fasting in there too, and it's we can all start healing ourselves with food. Cool. Well, I think we got through all the questions there. We've reached the hour mark. I didn't know sort of what you had for time tonight. I usually try and keep the live streams to around an hour. But I don't know if you had any sort of last words of encouragement for people out there, or I do like to sort of ask my guests, sort of, if you were looking back to when you first started, your journey's quite long and has had a lot of different turns and ups and downs. But if you were to talk to someone today that is looking to change their lifestyle, what would your sort of how would you sort of guide them to get started in something like this?
When I look back, I definitely wish that I had known how inflammatory nuts were. Like, because
Yeah.
I was throwing them in drinks, I was drinking the nut milks, I was getting these
Hmm.
terrible stomach aches, and I could not put my finger on it, and now I'm like, "Oh, that's what it was for me." I know that doesn't cause everybody gut upset, but it did for me.
Hmm.
Um, if I could go back, I definitely would have focused more on meat and not on trying to balance dirty keto foods into my life. Um, like if I go back to Biggest Loser, now there was a part of Biggest Loser where I was told to do 2 a days, and that wasn't that bad. So I was
Hmm.
told to do like an hour and a half of cardio in the morning and do some weightlifting and maybe a little bit more cardio in the evening for a total of 2.5 hours. I guess that isn't as bad as like what's happening on the ranch, which was like 12 hours of
Hmm.
madness. I would have ate more protein. I would have definitely ate more protein so that I could have been full, because I was never full. This whole thing, I don't really care which route you go. Please don't get gastric bypass. If you're going to get a surgery, go with the sleeve or go with the one where they put the ring around because at least they can take
Mm-hmm.
that out. You know, when
Mm-hmm.
you sleeve, they take part of your stomach out and you never get it back. You can't have it
Mm-hmm.
back. And people have holes and infections and ulcers but I definitely would not go with gastric bypass. No gastric bypass. No matter which route you go, even some people are going more of this peptide route. Everybody just needs to eat meat because
Mm-hmm.
otherwise you're losing your muscle, you're losing your metabolism, you're becoming malnourished. No wonder you're starving. No wonder your cravings are going through the roof. You're never actually full. And you put yourself in a place that's not maintainable no matter what you're doing because you have no muscle left and you've killed your metabolism starvation mode. So, no matter what route you go, I would incorporate that most of your plate is meat. And I'm not saying you can't have anything else. That's not for everybody, but mostly meat. Cut as many chemicals as you can most of the time. And um, just that would be my biggest thing for everybody. Because I understand that for not everybody is going to go, lion diet's really maintainable for me. You
Mm-hmm.
know? Another thing would be stop the snacking. So, Biggest Loser, I was eating 3 meals a day plus 2 snacks. That's eating 5 times a day.
Mm-hmm.
5. And then after my gastric bypass, I'm having all these blood sugar issues. They told me just eat every 5 minutes. I had no idea the insulin madness that I was living in. So, eat closer together, eat less meals, eat like heavy meat so that you are nice and satiated. If you can, at some point, fast.
Mm-hmm.
I feel amazing after 48 hours. Like my
Mm-hmm.
72 hours between 48 and 72, I feel energized and amazing. I sleep good. I love the fasting piece. Get some sleep alone because it's never going to last if you're doing it alone. Even
Mm-hmm.
if it's messaging us on YouTube and Instagram,
Yeah.
make some
Mm-hmm.
friends.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. The community is key, I think, and that's why I try and be everywhere that I can in the community because we're not all doing the same thing, but supporting and answering questions whenever we can is really important. So, okay, well, we definitely have Chrissy is on the carnivore wagon for sure. It's amazing how less I eat, but feel more nourished on carnivore. Absolutely, for sure, and that's
I
what
have
it's
a
all about. Yeah.
I have a local friend who just went carnivore. She lost 5 pounds in just a couple of months, and she's
Hmm.
45, and she just got pregnant with
Wow.
like number 9. And obviously at that point, like you're a big family person. This is a very exciting thing. you
Hmm.
know? So and
Yeah.
my husband, he's been Standard American forever. And
Hmm.
after we went on our first cruise ever, we went on the 2KK cruise, he was like,
Hmm.
"I feel like crap." He felt so awful. And he was like, "Okay, what is this carnivore thing you're doing?" And he
Yeah.
didn't go full carnivore, but he was pretty close, and he had never felt so good in his life. He had
Hmm.
no idea how tired he was. He had no idea the food he was eating was causing him brain fog. He had no idea
Hmm.
why his blood pressure was so high, why the circles under his eyes were so dark, and he was like, "Ugh, now he knows." And
Yeah.
and he wishes he didn't know.
Yeah. Yeah. I've said it many times on here and to everybody that'll listen is that you'll never know how bad you feel until you feel good.
Mhm.
Or how bad you felt because we might think that we feel good. I lived on a crap diet for 49 years, right? I didn't always feel great, but I didn't really know how bad I was feeling until I changed my lifestyle. And now I would never give it up for anything. Like there's just nothing, there's no food in the world, there's no anything that I'd ever give it up for because I know now that I was not feeling good back then. And if I had stayed on that sort of pathway, I probably would have some serious health issues now. So,
Yeah, that's another
yeah.
big lesson. I see
Hmm.
my family and they're going more of a medical route and they're like, "Yay, I can finally moderate food." And it's like,
Hmm.
"But you're still not full." Like, I
Right.
mean, I don't think that the answer is that we should be hungry all the time. Like,
Right.
I don't think the
Right.
answer is that we needed to eat less. I actually think you can eat quite a bit of meat,
Hmm.
and be pretty satiated and full and nourished. I think the malnourishment is the piece that people don't understand. They think that their food is loaded with nourishment, and it's not. Our body doesn't even
Hmm.
recognize 90% of the things people are eating.
Right. Right. It's a minefield out there. You just have to, but the simpler it is, what you're doing, usually the better it's going to be for you in the long run. Okay, well, this conversation has been really good. I'm glad we were able to get together and do this.
Yeah.
Like you say, you've got a great community over there. Obviously, there's been lots of good comments and questions come through from your side. Hopefully, you know, eh, I always say that, hopefully, even if there's someone in the background that didn't comment or ask questions tonight, hopefully it's what we've talked about will help one person. At the end of the day, that's, if that's what happens, then it's all worth it to me anyways. And that's why I'm here. So
I totally
I,
agree. Thank you so much for having
yeah,
me.
yeah, I definitely appreciate you taking the time to, tell your story to my viewers. And then, we've been on your channel as well. And, hopefully everyone got some good information out of this and enjoyed the conversation. So we'll uh, close this off for this evening, unless you had anything else you needed to share.
Happy Halloween, everybody.
Yeah, happy Halloween for sure. That's coming up. Yeah, the candy holiday. So yeah,
Yeah.
I hear you.
Mm,
Okay,
yeah.
well,
But it's also a costume holiday.
it is absolutely. So if you want to just hang on for a sec, I'm going to close out the live stream and then we'll go from there. Have a good night, everyone.
Thanks for coming.